Alright, I've got a lot to talk about today and not enough B-roll, so you're going to just have to watch me looking awkwardly at the camera and reading the script, but pretending I'm talking off the cuff. So what's new? Oh, look, I got a new t-shirt. I got another bass, too. I mean, that's probably what you're here for. Well, that's enough casual banter. Time to start reading the script. Right, I'm supposed to read it out loud. Sorry. It's time to talk about Yamaha. 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 Yamaha? Okay, technically Yamaha Corporation makes musical instruments and Yamaha Motor Company makes motorcycles, scooters, boats, snowmobiles, golf carts, etc. It's a mobility company. Anyway, they're kind of the same company. They even have the same logo. The origins of the Motor Company have to do with Japan's military needs during World War II, but well, I'm already too far off on this tangent, so let's reset. Yamaha makes just about every imaginable kind of musical instrument. I think they're probably best known for their pianos, keyboards, and percussion, but they also produce band and orchestra instruments and electric guitars and basses. Yamaha's instruments are well known for their consistent quality, but they're not generally associated with being awesome. They make excellent beginner and intermediate instruments, and while Yamaha does also make professional-grade instruments, they're usually not taken very seriously in that realm. For instance, let's see how my son, a music performance major in his senior year of college, reacted when he realized that my tenor saxophone was a Yanagasawa, not a Yamaha, as he had initially thought.
I played on it a little bit. I was like, this seems a lot better than a Yamaha. And then I looked, and I was like, oh my god, Yanagasawa! Okay, that makes sense.
I own an intermediate Yamaha clarinet and a student Yamaha bass clarinet. Those things are expensive, even at the student level. I used to own a pro-grade Buffet R13 clarinet, but I gave that to my son when he was in 8th grade, and it was clear he was already a better clarinetist than I was in college. It was a practical consideration. Spend $3,500 on a new Buffet, or give him mine and replace it with a $1,600 Yamaha, since that's good enough for me. That's really the problem. Yamaha instruments just seem to be good enough, not something to get excited about. The Reface keyboard series, of which I own all 4, as you saw earlier, they're right over there, that's another story. In the future I may make another video dedicated just to those, but for now let's talk about Yamaha guitars and basses. I've never been very interested in Yamaha guitars or basses, mostly because A, I primarily encountered their entry-level instruments and was not interested, and B, I just thought they were kind of weird looking. I mean, they are kind of weird looking, and not in a cool way. So, what changed my mind? I've owned a few 5-string basses over the years with varying degrees of enthusiasm. 2 Fenders, a Music Man, and a Squier. The only one that was a dud was the Mexican-made Fender Standard, but ultimately, I came to the conclusion that I'm primarily a 4-string bass player, and I didn't really need a 5-string. But it turns out that's just because I went a couple of years without playing bass in a pit orchestra. The arrangers for Broadway musicals, whose work eventually filters down to us community theater types here in the hinterlands, tailor their work to a few assumptions. For instance, they assume reed players can play all of the reed instruments, and will write a book for a single player to cover as many as 8 instruments. Yes, I recently played a show where the Reed 1 book included flute, piccolo, oboe, English horn, clarinet, soprano sax, alto sax, and tenor sax. Fortunately, I was playing the Reed 2 book, so I was only expected to play 5 instruments, and in reality, I only played 3. Another assumption they make is that the bass player, who of course will be playing both acoustic upright and electric bass, has a 5-string. The electric bass parts always include a few gratuitous-seeming low E-flats and Ds just to underscore that requirement. Playing bass in a pit again, I realized that I do, quote-unquote, need 5-string bass, which was just the impetus I needed to finally give Yamaha a try. Why the BB435? I was initially considering a Sire V3 5-string in a delightfully obnoxious yellow-orange, but I've already been burned by Sire once, and I wanted something different. I own enough FSOs already. So I opened my mind to Yamaha, and I gradually came to accept the uncanny valley proportions and contours of the BB series. I was debating between the $379 BB235 and the $599 BB435. I even considered ordering both of them from Sweetwater for the sake of this video, then returning one of them. But in the end, I knew that the extra features of the BB435 were important enough to me to warrant the extra $220. What extra features? The first thing I noticed about the BB435 is its weird bridge. There's an extension behind the saddle for the B string. It's designed so that your B string is longer than the other strings, thus at a higher tension. But why? Well, the extra tension should help improve definition on the B string, which is a notorious problem on cheaper 5-string basses. And since the entire reason I'm buying this bass is the B string, I think that's important. The rest of the differences are on the back. The contoured heel, the mitered 6-screw neck mounting system for better sustain, and the angled through-body stringing option. That last one intrigues me because I prefer flat-wound strings, and you generally can't string those through body because the angle's too sharp. This seems specifically designed to allow through-body stringing of flats. The entry-level BB235 has none of these extra features, just a normal bridge, a standard square heel with a 4-screw neck plate, and no through-body stringing option. Oh, and there's one other thing, the back of the neck. The neck on the BB435, like on the higher-end BB line, is a 5-ply maple and mahogany construction. The neck on the BB235 just looks like plain, unfinished maple. Even though I prefer a satin finish on the neck, a glossy finish just feels too sticky under my sweaty hands. I've had some lower-end basses like this with no finish at all on the neck, and it just feels weird. The BB435 neck has a nice satin finish. Well, at least I thought it did from the pictures. More on that in a bit. So, are you going to open the box or what? All right, let's do that. The first thing I noticed inside the Yamaha box was the thick plastic envelope with the owner's manual. Most electric guitars and basses come with, at most, a small pamphlet, but Yamaha, just as with their woodwind and keyboard instruments I already own, provides a thick, detailed owner's manual, translated into 11 languages. I'm really impressed with the fact that the manual offers guidance on adjusting the string action, intonation, pickup height, truss rod, and even the tuning machine tension, which I had no idea was adjustable. Speaking of the tuning machines, they were the first thing that got my attention when I sat down to play the instrument. They are really nice. I expected that from Yamaha, even on a decidedly mid-range instrument, but it's nice to see that their hardware quality lives up to my expectations. The next thing I noticed is that it feels really light, especially for a 5-string. Sweetwater's website said that this one weighs in at 9 pounds 2 ounces, but honestly, it was lighter than I expected. The volume and tone knobs also feel really smooth to turn. They're not crooked due to the set screw like on a lot of basses. And just like the tuners, they exude quality. The back of the neck, not so much. It's completely unfinished, which really surprised me. And while it's not exactly rough, it's not as smooth as I assumed it would be. It's similar to the neck on my G&L Tribute Kiloton fretless. I was hoping for something more like the necks on the Squier 40th anniversary basses, which are honestly the best feeling necks I've played on a bass at any price. These instruments are all made in Indonesia, likely all by Cort, and possibly in the same factory, but the parent companies definitely make different decisions about which corners to cut in keeping final prices in the $500 range. I took the matter of the neck into my own hands by applying some mineral oil to the back, along with the fretboard, when I removed the stock Roundwound strings to replace them with my preferred DR Legend flats. Despite the lack of finish on the neck, I do appreciate the design of the neck. It tapers more than a typical 5-string, so the nut width is actually the same as the standard nut on a 4-string precision bass, 43 millimeters. Since I have smallish hands, not having to stretch excessively to reach that extra string is a big plus. The bass shipped with Roundwound strings, installed through body, as I expected. And even though the unique angled ferrules allow for installing flats through body as well, I want to load them on top, so I can test out the effect of that weird B-string extension on the bridge. What else did I notice? The low end of the split pickup was adjusted at a rather extreme angle. In fact, the pickups overall feel a bit loose, which I heard mentioned in another Yamaha BB bass review. The action is nice and low, the way I like it, and it doesn't have issues that would have required a neck shim to solve, like my former notoriously disappointing Fender American Ultra jazz bass. But how does it sound? One of the first things I noticed when I started playing the BB435 was that notes at the 19th fret were super flat compared to the next lower open string. They should be exactly 2 octaves apart. The high D on the 19th fret of the G string was 15 cents flat. Fortunately, it turned out this was just due to poor intonation setup, and I was able to resolve the issue easily. Before we hear the bass, I have to admit at this point that I've been procrastinating on making this video. When I've made past bass demo videos, I generally shot them the day I opened the box, or at least within a couple of days. When I finally recorded these demos, it was more than a week after I first opened the box, and that was almost 2 weeks ago now. Why? Well, I was busy playing a 3-week run of the SpongeBob musical for a local community theater and preparing for a pair of gigs with my band, 32nd Street Jazz. But there was another reason. I just couldn't get excited about this bass. It had some issues, but it's not bad. It's just not exciting. I do still think it's kind of weird looking, and I didn't really like the look of the cream pickguard with the black body. That's another part of why I was delaying. I ordered a pair of replacement pickguards from Pickguard Heaven that I was waiting on. In the meantime, I decided I preferred the look of the bass with no pickguard at all, and you'll see that in the demo song that I do later. Fortunately, screw holes aside, the body doesn't have any cavities under the pickguard, so it doesn't technically need one. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It's time for some tone demos. I'll be playing both the stock Roundwound strings the bass shipped with, as well as the DR Legend flats that I swapped on. swapping the strings, and more. Anytime I get a new bass, I immediately put on new strings because I'm hooked on flats. And since I'm tinkering, I also remove the control cavity cover just to see if there's any shielding. I'm pleased to say this bass came with shielding paint in the cavities and foil lining the back of the cover. Shielding is an area where a lot of companies skimp with their Indonesian and Chinese-made models, but it's nice to see Yamaha didn't do that. With the strings off, it's a great opportunity to oil the fretboard. And in this case, with the unfinished neck, I oiled that too. I did this with my G&L fretless, and I found that the F1 oil I used was leaving a sticky residue on the back of the neck. I suspected that may have just been because the bottle I was using was old and had gone bad. It's the only one I have though. But I do have a bottle of clarinet bore oil from the same company, and I strongly suspect they're actually the same product, just labeled differently. The bottles themselves are identical, and the oils smell the same. Apparently the ingredients of these oils are a closely guarded secret, but both are described as containing tree and seed oils, no lemon and no petroleum, so I figured the bore oil would be fine, and it seems like it was. Okay, time for the strings. Even though the BB435 has angled through body ferrules, it's still kind of a sharp angle, and I wanted to see how the extension on the B string affects the string tension, so I'm stringing through the top of the bridge. My overall reaction. Pros: excellent hardware, good action, feels good to play, impressive value. Cons: needed significant intonation and pickup height adjustments out of the box. Unfinished back of the neck, still just kind of weird looking. Sound: the pickups are very dark sounding, even with the tone at 100%, especially with flats. The tone pot has limited range, almost like an on-off switch, or maybe a half-on-off switch. Music video. I always come up with a jam to end the video. Not pure improvisation, but a dashed-off composition put together on the same day that I record the video. I started working on the jam for this video the day I unboxed the bass, but since I procrastinated on the video, I ended up refining the composition in spare moments over a span of a couple of weeks, and it turned out to be a lot more elaborate than usual. I'm having fun with the new session player tools in Logic Pro 11, along with the chord progression editor. It's a great creative aid to put together a chord progression and then let the AI rhythm section, piano, bass, and drums come up with the general feel. I turn that into something of my own and record my own parts. As for recording the bass part, I found there were a lot of unwanted pops on the attack when I was playing the BB435 hard. I'm not sure if my finger was hitting the pull pieces on the pickup or if it's some other issue with their output level, but in any case, I had to do some extra processing to get rid of those pops that I don't normally have to do with my other basses. That's kind of a disappointing coda to the story, but I still like the song. Okay, here we go.